Hello there, this is Reverend Mirtha Koder from New Thought Community, and it is a pleasure and an honor for me to be speaking today, December 27th, 2020, about Jesus. Jesus Christ is the most famous and discussed and revered and, in some ways, polarizing person who has ever walked the earth. Approximately a third of the world's population worship him and believe him to be God. Another third believe him to be a holy man and a prophet, but not divine. For over 2,000 years, he has been invoked as emblematic of all that is good about us, and much of the modern world has in one way or another been shaped by him. And yet we don't know too much about him either. We don't know what he did or where he went, if he went anywhere, for 30 years of his 33 years. From the week of his birth until he was baptized by St. John and begins his mission, we hear of Jesus just once in the Bible. The only recognized historical account of his life, and that is when his parents find him teaching in the temple at the precocious but officially adult age of 12. We don't even really know what he looked like, even though almost every person in the world could identify him from a picture. As I stated before, we don't know really too much about Jesus' childhood, but our main glimpse into the childhood of Jesus is in the book of Luke, which revealed Christ's deep spiritual understanding and desire to be about my Father's business. That's in Luke 2:49. John 21:25 tells us that there were so many remarkable incidences in the life of Jesus that if they were all written down, the number of volumes would be beyond measure. What he accomplished in the 3.5 years of his ministry is really astounding. Thankfully, we have 4 gospel writers who record a great deal of what took place, including specific details surrounding his birth. These glimpses are provided that we may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. The gospel accounts provide rich details regarding the ministry of Jesus. The environment in which Jesus grew up was complicated by religious and political forces at work in Judea and the surrounding territories. Many acknowledged Jesus' birthplace was Bethlehem, a city long associated with the family of David. Jesus did not grow up in the area of Bethlehem or Jerusalem. Instead, Jesus' childhood home was in Nazareth, a city of Galilee. It is commonly said that Joseph, his stepfather, died fairly young, and that Jesus had to take upon himself the support of Mary and of his younger brothers and sisters, and that not until they were old enough to take the business on their own shoulders did he feel free to leave Nazareth and go into the wider world. It was essential that Jesus should carry out with the utmost fidelity the more limited tasks of family duty before he could take up the universal task of saving the world, according to Christians. It was by his conscientiousness in the performance of the narrow duties of home that Jesus fitted himself for the great task he had to do. So what were some of the characteristics of the life of Jesus? He was forgiving, he was humble, he was of service to others always, and he glorified God. What were some of the miracles that he did here on earth? He cleansed lepers, blind received sight, people are healed from a distance. Peter's mother-in-law was healed, paralyzed man healed, people touching Jesus' clothing are healed, various healings on the Sabbath, deaf and mute men healed, demons were cast out, multitudes healed, the dead raised to life, multitudes of food, walks on water, calms a storm, fills nets with fish. Peter catches fish with money in his mouth, turns water into wine. What did Jesus eat? He would have eaten the standard diet of Judeans of the time. Wheat products like bread, a lot of vegetables and legumes, herbs and spices, and some meat. In the Gospels, Jesus tells his disciples to prepare the Passover, so they're probably getting lamb. If he's eating meat, it's probably part of a stew. He has access to fish, probably to poultry though also. That's not mentioned in the text. He's probably eating sheep and goats. Cows are primarily working animals that produce milk. So he's also eating cheese like all observant Jews. He's avoiding pork and eating kosher animals, those that are butchered and slaughtered according to kosher practices. So what do we know about the Virgin Mary? She was actually born as a peasant named Miriam in the tiny village of Nazareth. Her days were doubtless spent toiling to help pay the taxes demanded by the Roman Empire, Herod, and the temple. Like any other girl of her social class, she probably lived in an extended family unit and spent hours every day helping to prepare meals, carry water, and wash clothes. Definitely not a glamorous life for history's most celebrated woman. As for Joseph, it's unclear where he was born. Ancient Christian histories differ on the subject and offer Nazareth, Bethlehem in Judea, and Jerusalem as possible birthplaces. Evangelists Matthew and Luke have him being from Judea near Jerusalem, almost definitely for political reasons probably, as that would establish Joseph and therefore Jesus as being connected to the house of David. He was likely a carpenter, as he has been most consistently depicted, although the Latin translations of the New Testament describe him as an ironworker, as an artisan. Joseph may have had things a step easier than the peasant class, but he would still have faced the same task of feeding himself and his family and would have worked tirelessly to make ends meet. It's also probable that Joseph was literate and passed this skill onto his sons through teaching the scripture. So what about Jesus's wisdom? Jesus clearly understood his audience. He was preaching mainly to humble, unsophisticated people, so he spoke in humble, unsophisticated terms. His sermons often employed homespun parables to which common people could relate. This gained their confidence. They could see that he was one of them, and the more he listened to him and heard stories about his teachings elsewhere and witnessed or heard about his miracles, the more he was considered a real prophet and possibly the real Messiah. That, of course, became very dangerous for Jesus and ultimately led to his arrest, followed by his death and Good Friday. These initial teachings reveal to us Jesus' ability to understand and show compassion for his people. His obvious empathy certainly was more attractive than any fire and brimstone evangelical person, the meat and potatoes of any false prophet then and now. So to end my talk today, this information that I brought together for you is just a small amount of the many positive doings of Jesus. He has always been my go-to person when I do treatment and when I need answers. And obviously, no one could ever possibly say and explain all the wonderful things he did. But this is just a little bit of what he did. Thank you so much for listening and for coming on today on Zoom to New Thought Community. Many blessings and namaste. Thank you.